Hi everyone and welcome back. So my weekend has been very eventful. I actually did something every single day of this weekend, full of entertainment. And I'm going to share with you guys my experience with attending the only black-owned comedy club here in New York City, which I find to be very surprising. But not really though, because I like to go out, especially to comedy clubs. I like to just be entertained. I like to have fun. I like to balance my professional life with fun things to do in my personal life. And it's not uncommon for me to go to comedy clubs, right? I've been to probably, if not all of the comedy clubs here in New York City. 95% of the comedy clubs I would say I've been to here in New York City, and even out in LA, like all the popular ones. So it's not something that is uncommon for me, unusual for me. And as I tour different comedy clubs across New York, I'm like, where's the black owned ones, right? So on my way to work on Friday that just passed, I was looking for things to do in New York City, and I searched on Eventbrite and I stumbled across this comedy club in Harlem. Now they are touting themselves to be the only black-owned comedy club in New York, which I think might be true because I have yet to find one, right? Like you go to these different venues and you're like, okay, it's a bunch of white people. It's mixed, right? It's a mixed crowd, white people, Asian, a few black people sprinkled in here and there, but it's like not sometimes what you're craving. Right, especially me living in Upper East Side Manhattan, like I'm surrounded by white people. So when I get around my black people, like I feel like at home. I feel like, yeah, this is where I belong. Like this is what I've been missing. So yes, there are times when like I'm craving that black energy. So I did something different. I actually put honey in this tea, soursop tea. See how it tastes. And going to different comedy clubs, I have been looking for like the black, like where's the black ones, right? Most of the ones I go to, they're white comedians and just a white crowd of people. Which, like I said, it's not really a bad thing. It's not like a major issue, but you just want to be around your people. And so I was happy to finally come across this black-owned comedy club on Eventbrite. That's what they have like as their promotion, like, oh, we're New York City's only black-owned comedy club. And I see the faces are black, like on the flyer, the promotional flyer, and I'm like, sweet. And so I'm hyped yesterday, right? Because the event was yesterday evening, scheduled for 8 o'clock. I'm hyped. I'm excited, looking forward to it. Granted, I live in Upper East Side, so I just had to take a quick bus north to Harlem. I get off the bus, walk in the direction of the club, and I'm looking for like signage, right? I'm looking for like the numbers that correspond to the address. I'm just like, okay, 517. I think that's the name of that's the address for the venue, right? I'm like 517. I'm looking, and I ended up getting to the end of the block where if I kept walking, I was going to be walking into Target. So it's like, okay, I know it's not that far, right? And I'm looking, and then I ended up going into this restaurant. I think it was like a seafood restaurant. And I saw that in the back they had like a venue space where they had like a bar, and then to the side they had like a club area. So I asked them, I was like, is this where the comedy club is? And it's just like, no. But the guy directed me to where the comedy club was, which he said was just like, as soon as I exit that restaurant, look to my left and I'll see a black gate, and I'm just going to go up some steps after I pass through the gate. So I'm just like, perfect, right? I do that. I go up the steps and I'm walking in, and it had to feel like the door looks like a freaking door to a house, right? I'm walking into the club, and in the comedy club, and I'm like, okay, I smell food. So I'm just like, okay, they got a whole layout of food sitting on the burners. They had a whole layout of alcohol, sort of alcohol, like at the bar. They had a kind of makeshift bar area and a makeshift like food area, kind of buffet. And I'm just like, all right, looks good. But then no one is there. Now, granted, I get there like 5 minutes before 8 o'clock. So I'm just like, it's supposed to start at 8. What is happening here, right? So I said 517. It's on 117th Street, 508. That's the address, 508 East 117th Street. So that's what I was looking for, right, as I was walking. And so I'm looking around. I'm like, okay, where are the people, right? And so then one of the guys approached me who works for the club. And he was just like, hi, welcome. I was like, okay, that's nice. And then another guy approached me, tall, slim, kind of fair-skinned guy approaches me. And he invites me. He says, you welcome, introduces himself. And come to find out, this is the owner of the comedy club, right? His name is Jamie Roberts. And so we exchanged introductions. And I'm just like, all right. So I sit down. Now, granted, the layout of the space is a decent size, right? It's like, okay, because you go into some comedy clubs, it's kind of cramped seating, like shoulder to shoulder. You really have a room to like stretch out your arms. So I like that it was spacious. I like that it had like cushion seats. They had like buffet style, those long kind of cushion seats, and then they had like tables and chairs. I ended up sitting like in the cushion seat, long bench style seating. But I'm still waiting. It's like no one was there, right? So then finally this guy walked in and he introduced himself. He sat down next to me, and then he said that he was part of the band. Because I'm like, okay, are you... He asked me if I was performing, and I'm like, no. And I'm like, are you? He's like, yeah. So in my mind, I'm still thinking, okay, I'm here to see comedy, right? So he's like, yeah, I'm a part of a band. And I'm like telling him about who I am. I'm a psychologist, this and the other. He seems very fascinated. And I'm just like, okay, cool. Like, I don't mind, like, engaging in social interaction. But if I'm there for something, like, come on, let's get on with the show. Like, now it's 8 o'clock. The show is supposed to start. And yet, still, like, I and the other guy were the only people there. And so then he was like, yeah, I don't know if it's going to be comedy. And so then that's when, like, the owner came and he was like, it's going to be a nice show. He was talking with the guy, the band member, and they were talking about, like, music. I'm just like, okay. He's like, yeah, you guys are coming. He was like, how many guys are going to be a part of your band? He was like, I think it's like 8, 10 of us or whatever. And I'm just like, okay. Now, it's not uncommon to have live music playing, like, I guess, you know, at these venues, performances or whatever, or comedy events. And so I'm just like, okay. But I'm here for comedy, though. So, I'm waiting. And then finally, like, his band members show up, right? And then they, like, setting up their little stage or whatever. And I'm like, okay, live music is cool and all, but I'm not here for that. Then this woman walks in. She sits down next to me. And I'm, like, talking with her. And I'm, like, just trying to get an idea of, like, what the hell is happening? Like, I thought the show was supposed to start at 8 o'clock. Still nothing, you guys. And I'm just like, okay, I'm here. So if I'm here, I'm already, like, I already left my place. Like, I'm already out. I might as well just sit down and just accept it for what it is, right? I can't change it. Just accept the reality of I may not get what I actually came here for. And then I checked. Interesting enough, I checked the ticket because I had to look at the ticket like another time. Like, hold on. I know I bought a ticket for a comedy show. And then I had to, like, really double check to see, okay, did I even pay for this? Because I know some events on Eventbrite are actually free. And so I'm like, did I even pay for this? And then I saw that, yes, there was a price on the ticket. I'm like, yeah, I paid for this. Okay, so I'm like, I paid for it, but yet it's not going as I expected. But I'm like, okay, we'll see how it goes. And then the owner was just like, he sat down, because the owner came and chatted with me a few times. Jamie Roberts, and he was just like, yeah, this is a relatively new place. He said they opened October 2021, right? So yeah, they're a baby in the community. And he was honest. He was like, yeah, it's been difficult, you know, to get people to come out. He's telling me like his different promotional methods that he's tried to kind of ring people in. But he was like, it's hard to get black people to come to these shows. And I'm just like, you think? I mean, this is Harlem, yo. We're like in East Harlem, smack dab in the middle of the hood. All these people, we know New York City has a shit ton of people, but he's like talking about the difficulty of getting people to come out. And I think it's really about the approach, right? The marketing approach, which is kind of what I want to talk about here in this video, how and why like black businesses fail. Now, it's a statistic going around to say like majority of businesses in general, irrespective of race or ethnic background, fail within the first couple of years of opening, like 1 to 2 years of opening, right? But I think that number is even higher for black-owned businesses, and I think it is attributed to a number of factors. First and foremost, we do shit different as a culture, right? And there's this whole idiom of black people time, where we got our own way of, like, we have our own time system, right? Like our own kind of way of going about doing things, and it's very unstructured, very kind of lackadaisical. We almost like really don't have a respect of time, which time is money in general, and especially in business. And it's just like the ticket says 8 o'clock. You're advertising that the show is going to start at 8, and yet it's not starting at 8. And not even that. It's not even the event, like what you guys are promoting, comedy, that's not even happening, right? It's a totally different program schedule. So given that, it's good I'm flexible, but still, it's just like a lot of people wouldn't be as flexible and would really be upset, right? And probably expect a refund. So given that he found out that I expected it was going to be comedy, he was like, sorry about that. He did apologize. This is the owner, Jamie Roberts. He apologized, and then he's like, well, what I can do is, I can invite you to come to the next comedy show, which I think he said was next Friday, or this coming Friday. And he's just like, it's going to be on the house. You don't have to pay for it. And then he said that the guy from Living Single, I don't remember his name. What's the guy from Living Single? Drop his name below. The light-skinned guy with I think he had glasses, from Living Single. He was like, he's going to be there performing. I'm just like, all right. I said, is he going to be only one? He was like, no, it's going to be like 3 other comedians there. I'm like, all right, I may come. He was like, it's on the house. Don't worry about paying for a ticket. So it's like, you want to support black-owned businesses, right? I know I want to support black-owned business, especially as a black-owned business owner myself. But do you really want to deal with these, like, I feel like it's very inconvenient. These inconveniences of attending and supporting and patronizing these black-owned businesses and not really getting what you paid for, right? But I'm not done though. So I did stay for the event. It was basically like a musical performance, live band. It was a jazz band, and I'm asking them like, because I'm curious to see. Okay, well, this is a sizable band. It had at least like 8 members, seemed to be, and including like singers. They had like saxophone players. They had the bass drum. They had like guitar and all of these different parts, and they had singers too, all black. So I just think that visual, that was inspiring to me to see that visual. I'm just like, I love it, y'all. I just love the energy. And then it's all black people in the venue. Now, so granted, like as time progressed, more black people did start to trickle in, and by 9 o'clock it was like a good size, right? A good size to actually begin a show, good size audience. And so I didn't feel as bad. The vibes was like on 10. Like people were very respectful, welcoming, like inviting, it's just different energy. People came up to introduce themselves to me just randomly, like wanting to get to know me as a person. So I like that. So that might pull me back to come to the club, to give it another try, just because I felt like, after being there for a while, it was good vibes. I felt like a family vibe. And yeah, it was different people. There was a guy who he had just performed at Apollo Theater like early that Wednesday and lost. It was funny though the way he told the story, because he said that he went there to perform, and I guess he did like a song, but it was more like spoken word against music. But he was like, I lost. And he was like, I think I lost because the people uh they didn't get like what I was coming there to do. They thought I was gonna sing, but then I didn't sing. He was like, I got booed off stage. So they actually allowed him to get like on stage last night. Hello, Montel, you say you're interested in the topic. I hear you. A lot of y'all pop in, but then y'all pop right on out. So I'm not really convinced that you're that interested. But he was like, yeah, they let him perform right last night, and he like got up and like did like this this spoken word piece or whatever, and it was kind of more religious, more kind of spiritual tone to it. He talked about like his story being in prison and how God saved him. So I thought that was cool. But yeah, I think they just tried to like kind of freestyle the night so that it wasn't just only music, jazz music, but it was actually people just kind of getting up, showing their talents. And that would be, I think, a good idea too, where it is, you say you just came in. I see you just came in, right? That goes without saying, but I'm saying in general, when you guys pop in, I think I've seen you come in before, you don't stay. But that's besides the point. So, that's why I sometimes don't read the comments. And so, yeah, I was like, okay, so it was that. But when I was speaking with owner Jamie Roberts, right, and he was talking about his difficulties and just getting black people to come out and patronize, I was giving him my perspective, of what could be done. Like, okay, this is Harlem, just a few blocks away from 125th Street, which is a very like prominent area. A lot of street vendors along both sides of 125th Street. I was like, you go out there, just like they do in Times Square, right? And they go and they recruit people. They sell tickets. You can go out and do it that way. He was like, yeah, we sent a person out there yesterday to do that, but still. And so I was like, okay, but I had a difficult time finding it when I walked up, right? I'm walking and I'm looking for like some kind of signage, especially like the address itself. Another thing about New York, a lot of buildings don't even have addresses, right? So you're just like having to fucking do process elimination or any, meeny, miny, mo to get an idea, okay, is this the correct address? But I found it because someone next door was able to let me know, okay, look for the black gate. If I didn't know about the black gate, I probably wouldn't have fucking found the place. But there was no signage, and I said, okay, have you considered like the neon lights and neon signs? And then he's like, yeah, but that costs money. Now check this out. You think about it, everything costs money in business. If you really expect people to take you seriously, you yourself have to invest in what you're doing, right? You want people to invest in you, but yet I see this a lot, especially working with like independently published authors and entrepreneurs. Like they want people to invest in them, but how do they invest in themselves? Like where's the money spent from their own pockets investing in their own craft or their own products or service or whatever it is that they plan to sell? You don't really see that. It's very minimal, and I get it. It takes money. You right? It takes money to make money, and then they may complain like, "Oh, I don't really have the money." But what do you guys think? And I'm thinking like, okay, how much would a neon sign cost for him to even say, "Oh, it costs money," for that even to be like an inhibiting factor, right? Like, how would that even be an issue? Just buy a fucking sign. Why is that problematic? It's like it costs money. So yeah, that's another reason why I think that black-owned businesses fail, because they are not willing to invest in themselves, and they don't take business itself seriously. Business is business. You have competitors. Understand that. Now, granted, black people are some very talented people. I have to say that. Everybody that was in that room last night, like, came with talent, like talent that should be on TV, that should be recognized. And so I think perhaps that could be part of it. Like we get in our feelings and we feel egotistical, thinking like, oh, I'm the shit, right? You're the shit. So it don't matter what time you start. It don't even matter if you're actually doing the actual program that you sold tickets for, just as long as you show up and you somehow entertain people. The tickets were $20 each. What depends on different people? Let's be more specific in communication so that nothing is misunderstood, right? Because the thing about live videos and you interacting with the host, your comments are delayed, right? They show up like 30 seconds sometimes, like after the statement has been spoken. So it leaves room for misinterpretation, misunderstanding. We want to make sure that we're communicating effectively so that I'm not at a loss for what you're talking about or I misinterpret what you're referencing. But try to be a little bit more specific. I appreciate your engagement. I always like it when you guys are present and attending to what's being said, especially if you're leaving comments that are relevant. So yeah, it's like I really want to see them succeed. This is a black man. I'm looking at the flyer. That's why I keep looking over here. I'm looking at this flyer. So on my way out, the owner, he approached me again, right? He approached me several times throughout the night. He approached me again, and they handed me this flyer, and this is for upcoming comedy show they have. Just saying, they have weekly comedy shows on Fridays and Saturdays. Friday at 8, Saturday at 7. But that's the time is not. It kind of makes me wonder, like, okay, if y'all weren't on time for this, right, and then the scheduled program didn't happen, I don't know if I want to gamble that. I don't know if I want to just take the chance of coming back and then being disappointed again. Like, who has time for that? But what in particular are you saying how black people do things in business, right? Like, be specific. You're saying that depends on different people, how black people doing things in business. That's what I was talking about. Well, okay, so I can assume what you're saying in terms of black people related to the topic of the video of why black businesses fail. Yes, of course, different black people do things differently. So it's not to say all black people fall under this. But you can see a common thread amongst many black businesses. So when you hear people talking about like speaking negative things or negative attributes towards black businesses, it's not just sit up here and like just cast a stone at black owned businesses, right, and try to push them under the bus. No, but it's to point out obvious observations that have been made. And that's another thing. I feel like if you want to succeed, you have to be willing to take criticism. A lot of black people are not moved by criticism. They're just like, whatever, you're not going to tell me what to do, right? Especially if they feel it's unwarranted or uninvited, right? Unsolicited, They're not going to take feedback. You get stuck up in their own issues, right? Their own ego, and that's not helpful either. Like, if you have people that are willing to support you, these are people who are paid money, right? No matter the amount of money, customers, and we're talking about in general now. We're kind of just speaking, generally speaking, aside from the comedy thing. Just in general, when it comes to business, like, if customers are willing to pay you, right? People work for their money, right? People put in hard work for their money. They're willing to give you money. That means that says a lot, number one. They believe in you. They're taking a chance on you, right? So this person has already taken a chance on you. Why not take their feedback? People sometimes don't give feedback. They just don't show up again. It's like, all right, I'm not even going to leave a review. I'm just not going to show up again. Now, this isn't a review per se directly to the owner. I could do that. This is just me talking about my experience as a vlogger, right? I do this in a lot of different things, a lot of different places I go to. I speak on like what my experience was like. Just like on Friday, I actually went out to this movie screening called Quest for Sleep, and I gave my perspective on that and my experience, just like how it was, kind of tied into my video on being open about mental illness. And so, yeah, I think that we have to be more receptive to feedback, whether positive or negative. It's not so much trying to put an evaluation on if the feedback is positive or negative, but just looking at, okay, what could work in your best interest and not taking things as an attack. Because I get it, black people have been under attack for so long that we're like very guarded, we're very defensive, very kind of protective over our space, rightfully so. But how does that benefit one when it comes to navigating the business scene? So yes, we definitely gotta value criticism and just take in different perspectives, right? It's like a think tank, right? If black business were to sit down and just provide advice, information on how one can improve upon their business, like that could help, you know. I can speak from my own personal experience, right? Being the owner of a literary organization, it's nonprofit called UBAWA, or Urban Books, Authors and Writers of America. And of course, I've received tons, tons of feedback, right? And I take it all in. Now, I think this is the issue, is that sometimes black businesses are like, depending on the tone, depending on their mood, number one, right, it's going to depend on how they receive information. If they're in a bad mood, of course, you can care less what other people have to say. But if the person delivering the feedback, right, you feel like it's coming from like a ill intent, or you feel like they trying to do something to try to destroy you, is how they go about it. But even still, though, you have to look at the big picture, right? Because like I said, I can speak from personal experience, and I've seen it all just within my own management of my own company. Yeah, especially with social media, people will take to social media and they will out you. They will call out the name of your business, and one thing that you do wrong, one little thing you do wrong, they will just go and put you on blast, right? And so how likely are you to receive that type of feedback, that response, if you felt humiliated, right? Publicly humiliated, shamed, disrespected above all? You're like, fuck that, I'm not listening to that person. I'm not giving their refund or whatever, You see that this person is upset. They're not satisfied with the quality of the service or product that you delivered to them, that most likely they paid for, right? But it's still worth, I feel like this is still part of your development, right? So initially, as a business owner, you may feel hurt, offended, right, disrespected, all of that, especially if it's taken to social media. But it's those uncomfortable feelings that move you towards change. And if you don't take anything from that experience, then it's like, how can you grow? The whole point is so that you grow, you develop, you learn, okay, well, what can be done more efficiently? That's the thing. So I'm me being like I'm a connoisseur of comedy. I love comedy. It's like, and I love black-owned businesses, right? Just being pro-black myself and being a Pan-African. So I have high hopes and expectations for black-owned businesses in this comedy club. And I'm just like, yes, I finally found a black-owned comedy club. But yeah, they have to show improve. I'm just saying this from a business perspective. Granted, how things are going, it's just like, no, y'all got to pull it together. Because if not, if you keep going down that same path, then you're going to fail, right? And then what, right? You fail, and then you find another business idea, or you try it again. But like, yeah, sometimes you have to fall 100 times and you have to get up, 101 times. So it may take falling down, to learn those lessons. But sometimes you don't really have to fall down to learn lessons. You can just, learn proactively from other people. And talking about this comedy club, it reminds me of a few comedy clubs that I went to out in LA. Ha Ha Comedy Club, Comedy Union. They were black owned, right? And so I think there are more black owned comedy clubs in LA than here in New York, at least from what I've been exposed to. But then I just did some research, and if Google is correct, Comedy Union is shut down, is permanently closed. I'm like, oh no. But the pandemic did a number on a lot of businesses, just in general, white businesses too, or non-black businesses, shall I say. So it's like, if you're not bringing in money, how can you sustain yourself? Though I find it interesting how some businesses are able to sustain themselves, or were able to sustain themselves during this pandemic, not being able to make revenue, right, or generate revenue. It's like, how can you stay open? Because you got to pay rent unless you own the place. But then you still got to pay taxes, property taxes. So how were some businesses able to sustain? Granted, they did give out those business grants and business loans during the pandemic, but that money I don't think is sufficient. You think about the cost of a commercial rental space monthly, right? Knowing that they have to pay that. And you're not bringing in the revenue. Typically, on a good day prior to the pandemic, were bringing in thousands of dollars a day. But if you're not getting that, then you're just going to keep seeping deeper and deeper into debt. You're going to owe people. And I've met business owners here in New York. They've shared their stories with me and let me know, okay, how did they get through this pandemic? Knowing that you got to pay rent on commercial space, but you're not bringing in the revenue. People just don't have it, right? People are out of work because of the pandemic. They're not considered non-essential employees. They're not bringing in the money. How can they go and spend the money with you as a business owner? So it's unfortunate, but I think I may give this place a try, right? I may. I just don't know. You know, people have to understand human behavior too. Like, psychology plays a significant role in business, right? And when we were doing our introductions, like, he was, introducing himself to me as the owner of the venue, and I explained to him that I was a psychologist. He perked up. He was like, right? People sometimes just look at psychologists as shrinks or people that diagnose people with clinical disturbances, but really, like, psychology is a broad field, and there's industrial organizational psychology that there are like specially trained psychologists that target businesses and try to analyze and find ways to help them improve. That improve will impact their bottom line, their revenue, right? Or just the functionality of their organization, their business. And so it's just like, sometimes it's good to get like an outside perspective on ways you can improve, and let's throw away your defenses for a little bit. Sometimes you don't need your defenses, right? People are so concerned about people trying to sabotage them, but really that person or that source could be helping you improve upon something that you're gonna need to survive. People speak from personal experience, and you just never know who a person is, right? But if you're always on guard and willing to fight against what someone is like suggesting or offering in terms of advice, then you're just gonna have to learn the hard way, and that's unfortunate. And I'm going to say this before I end this video. Like, I find it interesting how when we talk about black issues, it goes without fail, right? You guys just seen it here in the interaction where just the title is triggering, right? When you specify black this or black that, and it's linked to a negative experience or attribute, such as in failing, right? Black people go crazy, and the number one defense is kind of denial, right? Or having to say, like, you feel the need to say, oh, not all black people. But what does that serve, right? Like, breaking it down by coming to the defense when you see such statements and associations, and to say, oh, it's not all black businesses, right? Everybody is different. It depends on the person or the business. What does that serve? What is the point in saying that? Is it to protect yourself because you also represent black business, so you don't want to be seen in such light? Okay, possibly. But then, does that really get at the issue, right? The core of the problem. So, it's like, we can use a number of examples, right, as it pertains to the black community, right? I'm black myself. I identify myself as black, and I'm very proud to be black. But there are many negative attributes that are thrown out about black women. I don't feel the need to come to my own defense if that doesn't pertain to me directly. Though it does pertain to me, though, right? If we're talking about the black community, and if we are a collective and we move and behave as such, right, as a collective organized unit where we are concerned about the well-being of each other, then though something may not apply to you directly, for example, as a black business owner, but if it applies to other black business owners, why wouldn't you be concerned about that? Because I feel like the defense of saying, oh, well, that's not all black businesses, that could be a barrier to the discussion. How does it move the discussion further? How does it move the solution focused discussion further, right? If you're you're notifying, or you're paying attention to something that is problematic or an issue within the black community. You're bringing it to the forefront, but then people are saying, oh, well, that's not all black businesses. How does that statement of itself, right? You come into that defense of the ones that it doesn't apply to. How does that help solve the problem? One may say, okay, well, it shows that there's a good side of the black businesses, right? The black-owned businesses. There's something that black-owned businesses are doing right. So perhaps that could be a model to teach the ones that are not doing right, all right? But if that's the case, then why not continue to move the conversation forward by saying, okay, that's not all black business. It seems like the conversation usually stops at just that defense, right? It's just like the whole point is just defending themselves, right, against this this perception, right? Not wanting to take on that stereotype. But if only they could say that and then also provide, okay, that's not all black-owned businesses because X, Y, and Z, like I do this, I do that, or whatever, right? But I feel like even with that tone, though, that can be problematic because it's just like, okay, well, that's them, that's not me because I got this right, X, Y, and Z, and you point out all the things that you do right, as if like you're immune to failure as a black-owned business, or you're immune to like mistakes happening. So it kind of sets this kind of like dichotomous energy between, oh, well, the black businesses that are fucking up and making mistakes versus, oh, like, look at me, I'm doing so much better than them. I don't think that approach is helpful either. If anything, I would feel like if it doesn't apply to you, okay, it doesn't apply to you. How are you disturbed by this statement of black businesses failing, or black people this, or black people that? It's a number of things that we say, well, black people do this, or black people do that we perceive as negative. If it doesn't apply, it doesn't apply. But then wouldn't you as a black person be concerned? If you're so much concerned about how you're perceived, you should also be concerned about how the black community is represented as a whole. I wouldn't say it's a generalization. I would say that it's an observation. Right? A person is noting that a particular demographic suffers from a particular thing, right? Or a thing negatively impacts a particular demographic. I think it goes without saying that doesn't apply to every single person within that demographic. And I just feel like it, again, this is a distraction, right? Because here you are still trying to rationalize why people may feel a certain kind of way when you make a statement to say black businesses, this, or black people this, right? You're saying that they want to protect themselves against a generalization or a stereotype. But how does I feel like it's still a distraction, just like I was saying. It doesn't move the conversation forward. If we're bringing up an issue to talk about, this is a problem that affects a significant number of black people, right? Whether it's in business or if it's in health issues or whatever, let's focus on what that issue is, right? Why not exert that much energy towards trying to uncover what the issue is as opposed to defending against the generalization or the stereotype, right? Because it's brought up for a reason. I feel like this is the reason why we also can't come around to navigating solutions to the problem, because we're so busy defending against it and we don't see ourselves as a collective. We're like, okay, that's them. Like, it goes right over your head, right? This idea of unity, right, and collectivism is like, doesn't apply to the black community, right? Or we find it difficult to wrestle with. Instead, if it doesn't apply to you directly as an individual person who is a part of the black community, understand that this is still an issue that affects the black community, right? So when we speak of the black community, like, we are a whole. We are one. Yes, we are individuals within that whole, but when it comes to issues, especially from a Pan-African lens, like what affects one black person affects all, because we are one. You have to see it that way. If you don't see it that way, then yes, you're going to throw up this defense, right? And that to me is a disruption to the progression of being able to talk about solutions to the problem, as opposed to saying, oh, well, this is impacting black-owned businesses here in New York. All right, I'm a black-owned business owner in a different state, but because I see myself as part of that whole of black people, right, as a community of black people, then that concerns me. Instead of saying, oh, well, no, that don't apply to me, so you're wrong for saying that. It's just like, I think we have to get to a higher level of analysis and discussion of problems so that we could better go about solving those problems. Because we're so guarded, and this happens not only in discussing statements as it pertains to a significant number of black people. This happens like in many different contexts when just of discussion, right? People are very quick to throw up the defense, but throwing up the defense doesn't really solve the issue. Now, like I said, I think I do want to go back because I like the energy there, right? I like the experience. I like the music. I did not record. I do usually record like a snippet of performances, and I'll upload it, to my Facebook or YouTube. But I didn't do that this time. I guess I was just present in the moment. I didn't want to pull out my camera. But I really did enjoy myself. I have to say that. Because it was good music, good vibes. And they had two saxophone players, right? One of them, actually, he introduced himself to me, and he is a recent graduate of a music program. And the other one, I felt bad because given there were two saxophone players in the band, one saxophone player, he was like really trying to go up and beyond and outdo the other one. Like he really wanted to be heard, and I felt like it was his band. Like he took over the whole entire show. And I just think that, to me, that's like, I don't know. I felt bad for the other saxophone player because it's like he wasn't getting as much attention as the saxophone player. That he stole the show. I wish I could have shown you guys. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. You guys can go to the website. So they do have a website, Comedy in Harlem. I believe it's comedyinharlem.com, and it's owned by Jamie Roberts. Like, go check out their website. They do have like a list of advertisements for different shows that they have scheduled coming up, and even the one that I went to last night, so you guys can see like who was part of the band, who was performing. But yeah, I had a good time. I was just disappointed, and it made me think about, okay, this issue that is ongoing, right? And it seems to just, it's a persistent issue that negatively impacts the black community. And I will insist on saying that instead of saying, oh, some black businesses, right? No, we're not going to compartmentalize or create this divide when we're talking about issues that just impact us as a whole, right? We are one. So yeah, I think, I feel like every business has like a 50-50 chance at surviving, but I'm questioning, like, I don't know, it's like the 50-50 chance is more leaning towards not, especially if they continue down the path that they are on. I feel bad because it's a really nice space, and I was like relating to the owner to say, I know it's difficult to find a good space, a decent space in New York. So the fact that he found one, granted, it is upstairs. You got to climb some stairs, and then once you get to the top, you go inside. But it's spacious, and I will post a picture of the stage. I took a picture of the stage last night when I was there. But yeah, they got to do better and start on time, okay? That would be like my biggest, most salient, I think, advice is make sure you start like having people just sit there and wait. Because you got to think about, how does this impact one's psychological experience, right? Interpretation of what happened. And all this is happening on like our experience, like when we go to an event, right? When we make a determination, which that decision usually is made more on a subconscious level as to, are we going to return, right? Or how do we evaluate that experience? That decision is usually made more on a subconscious level. There's factors that are impacting one on that subconscious level, right? Whether you're greeted when you walk in the door, all this is like being encoded, right? Whether was it too hot, was it too cold, like were you uncomfortable in that respect? Did it start on time? Did you have to wait? Because when it comes to making decisions, and that's the thing about how our mind works, it computes things so rapidly that oftentimes we're not consciously making that decision, right? You can sit down and say, okay, like myself, how I'm doing here now publicly, like weighing out, okay, what were the pros of the experience? What were the cons? But people oftentimes don't have the time to sit down and do like an analysis, cognitive awareness, right, of, the pros and cons, and then say, okay, I'm going to go back. It don't happen that way. It's just like they go, they experience it, and then their subconscious mind makes that decision for them, right? So if you as a business owner, you're aware of this, you want to make sure that you're catering to that person in ways that, is going to resonate with them on many different levels psychologically, so that, they're going to come back. They're going to be like, damn, I had a good time, right? And maybe they're not even aware of certain things that made them want to come back. Like, I don't know what it was, but I really enjoyed it, right? And what it was just, those subtle things. It's the subtle things that matter, right? Starting on time and being greeted and good. I didn't get a chance to taste like any of the food. It smelled good though. They had it like set up like on a buffet style on burners, food warmers with actual like fire underneath. And so I saw other people getting plates, but I didn't get any. I was just like, yeah. I don't know. I may go back though. It was like bring a friend. I'm just like, That's the thing about recommendations. I have to say this before I end the video. It's just like people want good recommendations. I feel like you don't have to ask for a good recommendation, right? People will just give you one. If it was good, right? If they had a good experience, they're going to give a good recommendation. You don't have to say, hey, tell your friends to come back. No. I can't tell people to go there, because if I went there and I initially was disappointed because it didn't start on time and the program wasn't actually what was printed, right? It was a totally different thing. I went there for comedy and it was no comedy. It was a jazz performance with music. And for me, I like music. Don't get me wrong. Because he asked me, do you like music? Of course. Who doesn't like music? But it's just like, that's not what I expected. And I actually had earlier that day, yesterday, I had took a walk from Upper East Side to Lower Manhattan, which is uncommon. I've kind of gotten back in the routine though, because it's been cold, so I'm able to actually go out more now and take walks. And I'm walking like down First Avenue in Chelsea area, and it was actually 34th Street and First Avenue, and I was walking down the sidewalk, and I heard like some loud noise, some music, and I'm just like, oh wow. And I looked in the window and I'm like, okay, it's people in there, they're having like a good time. And it was like mostly black people. And I'm like, okay, it seemed like a nice spot, right? And I see like on the table, they had this big ass freaking gigantic oversized glasses of champagne. I think champagne shaped glass, but it had like alcohol in it. It had alcohol in it, and it had two. And I was like, damn, they doing it like that? Big, gigantic, like family size freaking champagne glass. So it seemed like a nice vibe, but then I thought to myself, like, the music is so loud. I think you get to a certain age, like I'm 38 years old, you get to a certain age where it's just like, yeah, you like to have a good time, but how you have a good time looks differently. Because all that loud music and commotion is like, nah, it depends though. It just depends. And so like with that last night, of course it was loud music, and like the instruments, they had like microphones to each instrument, so it just amplified the sound. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I enjoy nice, the thing about jazz music, it's really supposed to be soft, like that, soft, subtle. And shit ain't gotta be blasting freaking loud. And I'm right there, right? It's like 2 feet from me and the band, right? And so it's just like, I did have a headache. I had a headache, like falling asleep last night and this morning, waking up, and I'm just like, gosh, things like that. So when it comes to that decision as to like, am I gonna go back? It's just like, if you had like a good experience, but then at the same time a bad experience, that factors into that decision, right? You're just like, you more so lean, like, we're humans, we're beings like of comfortability, right? We tend to seek pleasure and avoid pain. That's just a natural instinct that's hardwired. With that being said, if you just analyze the experience, right? What was pleasure about it? Okay, the pleasurable part about it, okay, black energy, right? Black people, people came to, like, initiate conversation with me, which to me, I don't really matter, right? Because I'm just kind of like more of an introvert anyway, so I can really care less about the social interaction. I'm there for like the entertainment. Like, I would be probably fine, unmoved if I didn't have anyone come and introduce himself to me, because that's not what I thrive on necessarily, like social interaction. But that was cool. But then, what was the painful part? The painful part was the fucking loud ass sounds in my ear, just banging. And then, like, the waiting an hour before the performance started. Just, nah. So, like, how likely, you think about, okay, the likelihood of me going back. I think it's low. I think it's probably like, I don't know, 15% chance, right? Because there are so many other things to do in New York. That's the thing. It's just like, come on, you have so much other competition. Come on, y'all. It's not hard for people to find things to do here in New York. So if one thing didn't work out, he's like, all right, fuck that. And that just becomes like a disappearing memory in your mind, and you forget about it. I felt the need to share like my experience still here in a video, because I am concerned, and I do like the owner, so that might make me come back, right? The owner seems very personable. But if I have to wait a whole hour for the comedy show, hell no. I'm glad you made this conversation. I got some things to think about. So, Montel, you're a business owner. What's your business that you have? I like to get it here because actually I'm simulcasting now. I see you just disappeared. I'm simulcasting. My video chops up like that. I don't know why. But I'm simulcasting right now on 2 different pages. On my personal page, Danielle Leach, and also on Ubawa, which is my business page, so that the video is posted on both pages. It's like a new feature that Facebook has. Pretty cool. So I'm curious to see, like, what you said you didn't disappear. Okay, my bad. What's your business though? You say like you're drawn to this topic for a reason. Like, are you a business owner? What is your business? And then, like, I'm on Instagram too, and I'm like really inspired to see how there are so many black people. So it's not to just sit up here and try to, like I said, throw black people under the bus or create this negative perception. I think people are very protective of how black people are seen, by the world. So I get the motivations for the defense of, no, that's not all black businesses, right? Because you just want to, you want to rep good for the black community. I get that. And I do see a lot of black-owned businesses doing very well. Like, we are very talented people. And when I say well, I mean like multi-million-dollar businesses. And it's just like, dang, why didn't I think of that idea? But it's just like, it's so much opportunity to be successful. It's a gold mine of opportunities out there. And then some people say, well, it just got lucky, right? You just kind of stumbled across the right idea and went with it and just making a killing just off of products, right? For like, I can go down a list of different products I've seen successful black-owned businesses. Like, one black owner is in Miami, I believe, and she created like this yoni, whole yoni fucking line of products, the wash and creams and all this stuff, right? Now, on the surface, like, for someone who's very health conscious, I myself wouldn't use that, right? I don't believe in putting any kind of chemicals or anything really for that matter. Like, nah, you gotta be careful with that space down there. But like, she created this whole line. I guess it's supposed to be like organic products, like, and kind of add some positive, nice scents to the yoni. And I know she make a killing. She got a lot of customers, and yeah, her products just sell out like that. There are a lot of people. I just seen a video of this other black-owned business. I think there are a couple from Haiti made this Haitian castor oil, and they were on the Shark Tank show, and I think they actually got the investment, right? They won on the show, and yeah, they were saying how like, yo, the motherfucker make money. Like starting out, they were making like 6 figures, and they had a drop because they made a wrong decision of trying to sell directly to like distributors, I think. So that lesson, that kind of, I think sometimes we think like a certain approach is better because you're going to make more money or whatever. If you like cast your net short and wide, I think that was their approach. They thought that they would make more money doing that, like targeting kind of direct other like businesses to sell for them instead of them kind of selling directly to customers themselves. So they actually saw a drop in their sales, but then it shot back up, back to the 6 figures, and then like they are now like in the millions per year from selling Haitian castor oil. And I went to their website, and it was just like, what, $14 a bottle. I thought that's pretty interesting. I know some black-owned businesses, that's why I said that. Yeah, there are many successful black-owned businesses. So don't get me wrong. It's not, I think sometimes people misinterpret it. Like, I think we have to move not so much from our emotion because we feel a certain way when we hear things said about the black community. So we have like a visceral reaction. And instead of pausing for a second to take some time to think, you know. So I get it. You kind of want to create more of a balanced perspective. Okay, this is not all black-owned businesses. This is just, you know, some. But there's an issue that impacts a significant portion. Enough for people to say that this is common within the black community amongst black-owned businesses, right? It's like it's a pattern. You see a pattern, you know. It's a standard of quality, right? And people, when they patronize other businesses, right, you're used to a certain standard of quality, and then you go to other businesses, like, okay, it's a different standard of quality. Another example, more specific within the black community, would be looking at Jamaican American black-owned businesses, right? And especially when it comes to food, like, this is not made up. People say, okay, stereotypes is not true, but some stereotypes are true, okay? Just the fact of the matter. And you go to a good number of Jamaican carry-out places, restaurants, and they got attitudes. That's a common stereotype. They have fucking, but the food is so good. So it's just like, okay, you want the food, and you have to deal with the fucking attitude for a brief moment. You got to deal with, it's like abuse. When you think about it, kind of emotional abuse. But this is just how it is, you know, and it's just like, that's just their personality, right? One can say, okay, they have an attitude, but then, oh, that's just how they are. It's just a personality. It's just like fucking shit-faced looking all the time. And, you know, they don't really greet you. You walk in, because you notice a difference, right? Like, I live in Upper East Side Manhattan. Upper East Side Manhattan, if anybody does not know, consists of people who, on the higher end of the socioeconomic ladder, right? They make rich people, rich white people. That's how a lot of New Yorkers look at Upper East Side. Rich white people. It's something that, it's like you don't notice it until you notice it, right? And so I'm going to different businesses. Of course, I live here, and it's just different. You see the difference. The difference is, okay, just a greeting, right? It matters to some people, may not matter to other people. But walking in certain stores, like, you're greeted. Hello, how are you? With a smile, right? And then Harlem is like down the street from Upper East Side going north. And you go in certain the businesses, just like, they don't even recognize you, right? You trust, it's a feel, you notice it, right? I don't make a big deal out of it, but it's an observation. And then, you know, same thing. I go to Brooklyn, and I still go to these places because I just like being around my own people. And I know it's just a different culture, different way of doing things, right? I get it. I'm from the hood myself, so I get it. And so I have more tolerance for nasty attitudes or, you know, not speaking, because, like, I get it, you know. So, yeah, even when I go to Brooklyn, Flatbush, Fulton Street, going up in, you know, black-owned businesses, and it just moved differently. But I still patronize them. So that's just an example. What I'm saying is just like you're used to certain things. But yeah, that's a more salient example of like Jamaican. These Jamaican takeout places, right? They don't even greet you. Just walk in, tell them what you want, boom, you know. And they may not even say thank you after you give them money, right? You tell them thank you, they may not say thank you. Not to say all, of course. There's always somebody who say, oh, not all. But no, it's just, yeah. You know, but if you go to Starbucks, for example, right? White owned, you know, hello, how are you? Right? They have your name on the cup. Now, I don't drink coffee, but I'm just saying, these are examples, right? This, it's not to sit up here and like say, oh, black business are bad, white are good. No, if you, that's the takeaway you get, then it went over your fucking head, right? We just noting differences in businesses based on certain cultural characteristics, right? There's a lot of research on this, you guys. It's like, you know, and it's just something to learn from. You know, you see what works well. It's not about, okay, it works well because white people do it. No, it works well because this is just human nature, and this is just a human thing. Knowing what people like, what people respond well to, that's important. I feel like we covered a lot of ground. I just wanted to jump in here real quick and share my experience going to this black-owned comedy club, because it's my first one here in New York, my first black-owned comedy club that I've been to. And yeah, of course, overall, I was disappointed. But yeah, I mean, given that I have tolerance, you have to, right? I get it. You know, we just have to like make way, right? And just be more accepting of the flaws within black businesses. And so I stayed, right? I stayed, and I just felt like, okay, I just wanted to support. And you know, I stayed, I guess, because I was already there. But then I'm just like, yeah, looking back, yeah, the experience for me, I would rate it, let's say 1 out of 10. I would just have to, I don't know, barely a 5. I said I gave it 5 points out of 10 because good as band, right? Good as, you know, and I think that they need more exposure to that band. Because they were really good. But do it like, okay, so the show started at 9. I left there. It was like after 11, I think. I would say at least 2.5 hours. Do I want to be sitting? Like, did I plan to be going to a place and sit and listen to fucking jazz 2.5? And it's about blasting jazz music, right? No, that's not. No, that's not what I wanted, right? I like going to comedy clubs as opposed to like the fucking nightclubs with all the loud music for a reason, because it's not that loudness in your ear. It's fun, right? It's exciting. It's entertainment. But yeah, it's just my preference. And I heard the owner, he was saying how they've already been getting complaints from the neighbors because of that loud music. And just like, what do you expect? You know, like, black people, of course, we just do shit differently, right? And it's not just us. It's other ethnic groups too. Italians, right? Italians are known to talk very loud. Like, you're gonna hear and feel Italians, just like black people. You're gonna hear and feel us, right? And they feel like they're above the law. You do it the fuck ever until you ask it shut down. Then they shut you down. Then what? Okay, you getting complaints because it is in a residential neighborhood. Well, it's residential and commercial neighborhood. But still, like, that shit, music is loud. It's a lot of banging with those drums. But I'm going to end this video here. Feel free to share your comments below. I'll catch you guys in the next one. I'm leaning more to go. We'll see how this week goes. We'll see how it goes. It's just like, then what if I show up late, right? Considering, okay, black people don't start on time, especially this venue. Then they start on time, then I miss the show. But granted, I don't have to pay for the show, so that's on the house. So we'll see. If I go, I'll update you guys, let you guys know how it was. Catch you guys later. Drop your comments.